Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. I am Sean Anderson, Most Valuable Podcast, and the upcoming segment is from our full Fast Break podcast that we recorded. And if you do want to check out that full podcast, head over to Blog Talk Radio/The Fast Break. You'll be able to find the full podcast over there.
This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. This is a Fast Break Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Anderson. Alongside me, as always, is Ricky Widmer.
What's up, guys?
Hey, Dave Oster.
Hey, everybody.
And today, we are going to do our NBA mock draft 5.
The last one?
Oh, well, the last one you're doing. Because Dave and I got one before the week of the NBA draft.
Are you guys doing one?
Hot
the
take.
week one?
Yes, we're doing one of the week of the NBA draft. We're not going to miss that.
It's going to be a rumor mill. It'd be crazy.
Rumor mill. We got to get the whole thing out. I mean, people are going to want that. People are going to want that. We want to do it as well. I mean, we got to do that. So watch out for the last mock draft 6.0. We'll probably do 2 rounds because we're crazy. But Dave's probably like, oh, God.
I don't make up names in the second round. See if you guys catch it.
Anyways, we're not making up names this way. We're going to go 1 through 30.
The guy from Poland who's actually like 18.
Karnowski?
Not even. No.
Okay.
Just a Polish guy.
1 through 30.
It's a farmer.
1 through 30, it's going to be 3 parts. On Blog Talk Radio, it should be 1 whole part, 1 hour-long podcast. So if you're listening in there, thank you so much. But it should be 3 parts on YouTube. You're probably watching part 1 right now. If you are on YouTube, and let's jump into it. Number 1 pick on the board, it's Boston. We have the draft order set. We already did our post-lottery mock draft. So, Ricky, looking at this, I know you've had very... what's it called? Controversial, thank you. Controversial number 1 picks. What's your controversial pick this time around?
This one is basically simple. Boston is going to go with a point guard. The way I look at it is most people are saying it's going to be Fultz. I, on the other hand, like Lonzo Ball better. When we did the segment of Ball versus Fultz and we went through the 5 kind of areas and you laid out who had the advantage, I gave most of them to Ball. So for me in my mock draft, Lonzo Ball's got to be the pick for Boston.
And last week it was Josh Jackson, and the last time before
it was Ball, Jackson, and then back to Ball.
Okay.
So what has changed? Why do we feel like Ball has the advantage again?
In the playoffs, it was, okay, maybe they go with it's all what you're going to do with IT. And at first it's like, well, okay, are they not going to get rid of IT? You can go with a different position. But for me, IT is a big question mark. And if everyone's like, you're going to go at Fultz, and you're going to go point guard, and then I was just like, I like Ball better than Fultz.
And
Interesting.
Dave, looking at this, obviously you and I have a similar number 1 overall pick. We don't really need to explain it. It's the number 1 pick for pretty much everyone else. It's a consensus number 1 pick. Not everyone else. Some people agree with you with Lonzo Ball going number 1. But
the majority.
The majority consensus number 1 is Markelle Fultz. Why? Again, we just explain the reasoning why, because I don't think we have to go too deep.
He's like a mini. I'm gonna get some hate for this, but like D'Lo, like. He's a similar version to D'Angelo. No.
Yeah.
Look at the stats. Look at the situation in college.
But look at the actual players. He's a better player. You don't have to look. All stats aren't going to tell every single thing.
The way he looked in college, it's actually they're quite similar. I think from my point of view, I see a similar play style. I see a similar fluidity to their play. Both have a little bit of problem with turnovers at times.
Markel's a better creator.
Markelle may be a better creator, but
say a better defender when he wants to defend.
I don't know about
when he
that.
wants to defend.
That's the problem, when he wants to.
I think that there were a lot of highlight reel passes out of D'Angelo. So in college, at least, I feel like he really showed off his game a lot more. They're both on underachieving bad teams, So I feel like he's like a version of that, and it's not too far out. But again, very high upside. He's a scorer. He fits the modern day NBA needs at a point guard by being a good scorer, a decent facilitator. And he has, at times, been a two-way player.
Mm-hmm. And heir apparent to Isaiah Thomas, whose contract will be running up not this year, but the year after this season. He'll be around 29, 30 years old. So obviously, pretty much next in line to take over Boston as the point guard. Let's move on now to Los Angeles. Consensus pick again from Dave and I. We got the same player, Lonzo Ball, who you had going number 1. Pretty much an easy fit there. Reports coming out saying that Lakers aren't impressed with Lonzo Ball, or that Lonzo Ball or the Lakers don't want Lonzo Ball. I don't believe in that hype. I don't think that's anything true. I think the report saying that the Celtics are interested in him, I think that's bogus. I think the Lakers saying that they're not interested in him, I think that's complete bogus.
It's a smokescreen. The Lakers are only saying it just so Boston goes, okay, well, I guess they don't want him. We can't sucker him into trading us stuff for Lonzo.
It's a whole smokescreen, and I don't know if it's trading him into it. I think maybe just worrying him a little bit, because I think that Lakers would be fine with either Markelle or Lonzo, but still Lonzo is a better fit, at least for that team, because they need a leader, they need a facilitator, and they need a kid from LA. I mean, it's a perfect fit.
Might help them as far as the hype train, kind of bring it down a little bit to reasonable levels, because it had been so built up by everyone around in the media that it's a guaranteed lock and this is everything that's going to happen out of there. So it might kind of slow things down a little bit. Make contract negotiations are pretty straightforward in the NBA, thankfully, for rookie contracts. So I'm not too worried about that. But for me, it might just be like a fishing attempt to be like, if we weren't interested in Ball, but you were, I mean, nothing wrong with that. What would you be willing to offer us?
Or if they're not interested in him and someone's really interested in De'Aaron Fox and they don't take De'Aaron, you look at the Kings, maybe the Kings are really interested in De'Aaron Fox, they trade up for to number 2, try to take De'Aaron Fox. Ricky, looking at this, obviously Markelle Fultz still on the board, and they're taking him in.
It's going to be point guards 1 and 2 no matter what, whether it's Fultz Ball, whether it's Ball Fultz. And the way I look at both of these is exactly kind of like all three of us have our mock going, is if it's your mock, it's just who do you prefer better, who's the number 1 for you, who's the number 2 for you, and that's the main difference with most mocks.
And I totally forgot to mention, if you are watching on YouTube or listening on Blog Talk Radio, check out in the description, you will find our whole mock draft. We have a Google Doc that you can check out and follow pick by pick. But let's move on to number 3. This is probably one of the hardest picks for me to at least choose. A lot of players on the board: Josh Jackson, Jason Tatum, Malik Monk, De'Aaron Fox, a lot of players that could fit or at least fit needs for the Philadelphia 76ers, and we all have 3 different players going to the Philadelphia 76ers. So I will start off first, explain my pick. I got him going with Malik Monk here. A team that desperately needs shooting. You look at their stars right now. It's Ben Simmons. It's Joel Embiid. I think I've made the argument before for Josh Jackson, because I named both of their 2 stars right now, Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. Both guys have injury problems. Josh Jackson could probably have the most star potential out of the guys left on the board. I think that might play into their decision, but looking at it, you look at what they need. They need outside scoring. They need shooters that Ben Simmons can pass the ball off to. When Joel Embiid is a little bit cold, you need to go Malik Monk. I think Malik Monk's probably their best fit. I think it's a little bit of a reach at 3, but ultimately looking at what the 76ers need, if it's going to make your team better, it's not really that much of a reach. And if it works out, we really won't look back at it later down the road and look at it a reach. So I think Malik Monk is probably the best fit, both fit-wise and looking at the players currently on this team. I think that he's probably going to fit in best with that personnel. So Malik Monk is going to the 76ers for me at number 3. Dave, who you got?
Yeah, I've got Josh Jackson. You mentioned the 2 best players in this team are both injured currently, and one is injury prone already. The other one, Ben Simmons, we don't really know if he could have follow-up injuries, but I think it's just best player available again this year, and I know they've kind of been flipping back and forth on we're going to take what fits versus, fit and need versus best player available. And in my mind, it's still having that open mind of, we don't have a lock on our star moving forward. We've got a couple guys who have shown amazing potential, both in college and in a small preview at the NBA level. But are you confident enough with that moving forward, with that history already? I think they go Josh Jackson here. I think it's not a guy they have an immediate opening for, but you will make room for him, and you'll kind of find the spacing for him. The good thing is he can play multiple positions on this team, and their bench, and with the guys they've got under contract, there will be time to play. Trust me, this is not a team where you're going to sit, and only average 10 minutes a game during your rookie season. No, you're going to have plenty of time to go out there and run your game. I like Monk. Sean, I completely agree with all the reasons you said. The thing for me with the concern there is just the fact that Monk has a high upside as a scorer, but also when he goes cold, he is just worthless to you as a player. He provides very little off-ball help, and that's my concern. His up is very high. Josh Jackson, I feel, is just a little bit, gives you a more well-rounded prospect going forward.
Yeah, I mean, to me, both of the things that you guys have brought up, I sit here and I go, there are 3 things that there's 3 players that I would look at. The 2 that you guys said, and then the one I have them going with is De'Aaron Fox. And the reason why I have them passing on Jackson, passing on Monk, is right now the 76ers have 4 picks. in the second round. And I look at those picks, and of course, like at number 50, you're not going to get somebody anywhere near number 3. But I look at small forward, I look at shooting, and there have been guys that we have had in our first round late that now are no longer in there, and we're going to get to those guys. But the guys that are there in the second, I'm like, you know what? You can get a small forward. You can find shooting with that 36, maybe that 39 pick. And to me, I look at this team, and this might sound crazy, but just bear with me for a second. This team, first off, the big disclaimer that needs to be said is they need to stay healthy.
Yep.
Ben Simmons hasn't played. Joel Embiid has injury history. However,
Ja's had injury problems as well.
I'm not even with him. I'm not even worried about.
He's currently
right now.
on the team.
He's on the team, but it's one of those things where is he going to get traded? I don't think he's the future. And I look at this team: Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, Saric, all fit a role. And the blueprint I'm looking at is a team that's right now in the NBA Finals, and that's the Cleveland Cavaliers. You got Ben Simmons coming in, going to play that point guard, that on offense, that point forward role, kind of like a LeBron James, what he does for that team. Then you have Saric and Embiid with what they can do outside and down low. You can have one take the Tristan Thompson role, the other take a Kevin Love role. What do you need? You need a Kyrie. Now, I know De'Aaron Fox, the big thing everyone's going to say is Ricky can't shoot. Shooting is something for me you can develop. I take him more because of his defensive ability, and you need someone to go up against point guards that you're going to see in the East and eventually in the future, and that's why I go with the point guard, and I worry about getting the shooting guard and small forward later.
On a very basic level, that works, but Joel Embiid does not equal what Tristan Thompson does for the Cavs. Dario Saric definitely does not equal Kevin Love. Ben Simmons and LeBron, maybe. You know, obviously we've heard those comparisons when he was coming out.
I'm saying the blueprint. I'm saying the blueprint is kind of there to
even
do
you look at
something
Kyrie. Kyrie's
similar.
not known for his defense. Kyrie's known as creating his own shot and scoring and shooting from the outside and also driving in the lane. De'Aaron Fox can really only drive past
that's
using
what I'm
his
saying.
shot. He's not
too far out, though.
He'd have to develop the shot
but I'm
more.
saying
He's not
you
like
look
a
at
Kyrie.
you look at
different skill
Kyrie.
sets.
Kyrie's has one of the best. You know, he's unreal at handling the
and
ball.
I'm not
De'Aaron
saying-
Fox is nowhere near
I'm
the
not
level of
saying
Kyrie with
De'Aaron
handles.
Fox would come in and be exactly what Kyrie is. Kyrie came in, had a way better shot than what De'Aaron Fox is. But I look at these point guards, and I look at the point guards that you're going to have to go up against if you want to compete someday, and I look at what De'Aaron Fox can do defensively, and I go, that could be needed because the offense on the point guard side is going to be Ben Simmons.
I disagree with your comparisons, but I agree with the fact that bringing in De'Aaron Fox would be pretty big for them defensively because, you know, Ben will roll back. And there were talks about him trying to guard the one. I think we'll find out pretty quickly that he doesn't have the lateral quickness to keep up with a lot of ones in today's NBA. But I think De'Aaron Fox would give you an awesome defensive matchup. My biggest concern there is off ball. De'Aaron can run around and try to create, but his biggest thing is he's just another passer. And when you look at the rest of that roster, you mentioned it, Dario is a great passer, and he's similar. He's like a bigger but slower version of Ben Simmons and what he can do. So you need someone who can take that shot from the outside eventually. And I feel like having too many facilitators and not enough guys who can go like full ISO is probably going to be a concern for them in the long run.
You even look at the players currently on their team that would, you know, kind of stray away from that passing role. It's Joel Embiid and Ja, and really those
and
two
TLC
guys.
too.
At least you know Ja and Joel Embiid, the guys that we have seen in extended minutes, those are guys that work on the inside. And you know, I know Ja can stretch it out a bit, but still, you look at the majority of where they can score. Joel and Ja are going to work on the inside. There's going to be barely
Joel at that 3-point line, boy.
I'm just saying there's going to be a lot of lack of spacing.
I agree. I don't want to run into that bull's trap of we don't shoot the three.
If you're picking De'Aaron Fox for his potential, totally fair. I understand the defensive stuff as well. I just, again, the Cavs
just the one
was a
thing,
little iffy.
Like I said, blueprint wise, it's something
course.
I'm thinking about. I'm like, man, these kind of fit some of the the height, the weight, the position that they're playing. They got the key positions there. But the thing that I also, what Dave said, which the you mentioned the ISO ball.
Yep.
I kind of feel like having a facilitator, another one, wouldn't be bad because look at the Warriors. They're not a team that's going to kill you with ISO ball. They'll pass around. They'll find the open shooter.
They can, but then they can go back to Kevin Durant and let him just win because there's no matchup in the world that stops him.
And eventually you hope that Ben Simmons becomes that kind of a role. That's why you
He's
drafted
not,
him number
though.
1.
It's going to be tough to compare, this 76ers team that's very young to any team that's currently in the finals. I think
ton of
very
potential.
lofty. There's a ton of potential. We'll see where that goes. I think it's a tough pick there at Philadelphia. I think that's one we're going to
there's a lot of contests there.
to see what the best fit is. I think it's Malik Monk again, just from the outside scoring. I think it's the best fit with Ben Simmons' ability to facilitate. I think you have enough facilitators on the team. But again, it's anyone's preference, like you said, Ricky, with the Lonzo Ball, Markelle Fultz thing. It's whatever your preference is, and I don't think you really can go wrong with who you're really going to pick there. I mean, unless you're taking like Caleb Swan again.
Darko Milicic.
Yeah, okay. But Darko's not in this draft. Anyways, let's move on to Phoenix.
Or Dragon Bender.
Let's move on to Phoenix.
Not wouldn't
Jury's
do
out.
anything.
Jury's out.
Jury's still out, but he wouldn't
very
be
young.
anything day one.
He's very
That's what
young.
I'm saying.
Let's move on to Phoenix. Anyways, Josh Jackson is my pick there for Phoenix. Obviously not going number 3 to Philadelphia. I got Josh Jackson. I think he has the highest ceiling outside of Markelle Fultz. I think that he can really be turned into a star in this league. But then again, you look at his lack of shooting. That's going to be something he needs to work on. But you look at his athleticism, his quickness, and his defense, and his passing ability. I think he's got an all-around game that's going to fit well with Phoenix Suns. A player like Dragon Bender, maybe he can set up Dragon Bender on the outside when driving in because he's got great passing. Marquise Chris, those two can work well on a pick and roll. You also look at Devin Booker. I mean, setting up him shooting-wise, and then also with Tyler Ulis, he can drive in and dish it out to Josh Jackson. If he does develop his shot, he can be great. And also playing next to Devin Booker, who isn't the greatest defender. Marquise Chris, who isn't that great yet defending. A young team having guys Josh
A lot
Jackson
of
who could
growth
step
on
in.
that team.
Yeah,
Again,
Josh Jackson who could step in and be a good defender already. I think that's going to be a huge boost. I think it's a pretty clear pick to me that it is Josh Jackson. But we do have some differing opinions out here. I know, Ricky, you're the same with me, though.
This one was hard, and the reason why I say it's hard is I didn't know whether to put Josh Jackson or Jason Tatum. And I know that a lot of people are going to say, Ricky, it's easy. You put Jackson, he's the better small forward, but really it's another thing like Ball and Fultz. It's where your preference is. And the thing that really kind of made me solidify, yes, Jackson, is that Tatum might have to develop too much. He's got the core there to be your classic kind of scoring potential small forward, but there's too many like secondary areas that he needs to improve on, where Josh Jackson, he comes in, he's athletic, he plays both ways, and doesn't have as much to improve on as JT.
Yeah, and we're talking about small forwards here. Obviously, Tatum and Josh Jackson fit that role. I think that's one of the biggest needs, at least for this team. We're looking at starting.
Glaring hole to me.
Starting, but however, Dave, you have a different position here.
Yeah.
You have point guard. Obviously, Eric Bledsoe, a guy who's getting older, 27, I think he is. He's got a decent contract, locked up for a long time, but if they do want to move him for a younger piece, obviously they can do that. You also look at
Brandon Knight's also probably going to be gone.
Brandon
You don't
Knight as
like
well.
Tyler Ulis?
You know I love Tyler Ulis.
Brandon Knight as well, youngish player, but has had injury concerns, not the most
And
consistent.
he's not super productive.
And also Tyler Ulis is 5'9", so maybe people will overlook him for that. But you have De'Aaron Fox going there.
I do. And the one consistency I want to point out here across all three of these picks, 2 are Jackson, 1 De'Aaron Fox, is defense, because the Suns flat out just suck at defense. Like, that is not their specialty, and that's fine. They're a young team. There's a lot to come with learning how to play at the NBA level, at NBA speed, and around that. So I feel like really going for a defensive player here is the key. Whether you go Jackson, if he's on the board still, great. If he's not, I went De'Aaron Fox. I think they are probably going to end up moving Bledsoe. I think Knight is foregone. He's gone at as soon as they can find a decent deal. Even a non-decent deal they'll probably take just to get him out of town, because he's a non-factor and he's just taking away minutes from guys who you want to see grow. I think Tyler Ulis showed us a lot at the end of last year. And I have a lot of faith in him being my permanent backup point guard. Like, I was really high on him last year. I thought it was a steal when they picked him, and I still think he's a phenomenal player. It's just a matter of what De'Aaron Fox can do for you defensively to help shore up that first unit, night and day from what they can do. And the faith that we're getting as Devin Booker continues to grow, Marquise Chris, I mean, he's going to have every tool, it looks like, at this point. Dragon Bender injury, so I think that last year, scratch, I'm really, really curious to see what he can do this year. So personally, I think just Fox in there. I know it seems stupid to go for another guard because this team is so guard heavy, but they need to move pieces and line up that timeline, because it does you no good to have someone like Eric Bledsoe on this team. And no offense to the whole tanking and the process shit, but it really doesn't make sense. Like, what is he going to give you other than a little bit of veteran leadership? Because you can get that for much cheaper, and he has a ton of value on that contract. There are teams out there who are looking for veteran point guards who he's my mini LeBron still. Like, his stat line is pretty good. He covers a little bit of everything for you. And I just think that they can actually flip him for some decent value in a relatively quick time.
The one situation that I think of, and maybe it's because of where you had De'Aaron Fox and where I have De'Aaron Fox, the big difference is Philly, he would have a little bit more stress on him because it'd be like, hey, we don't have shooting. We need you to develop this. Whereas Phoenix, it's like, don't worry, we got D. Booker scoring 70, 80 points over here. We got it covered. Next Kobe over here scoring 100.
I don't know about next Kobe. Cool up there.
But the Suns were a top 10 offensive team. They might have been a little higher than that, actually. But it was just like, they're such a great offensive team. And you're right. It's very low pressure for De'Aaron Fox to come in and be that scorer. But
he can work with that defense early and then develop it.
Kentucky guards. Enough said.
Fair enough. I mean, what?
Every year?
Knight is a Kentucky guard.
Knight, Bledsoe,
Ulis.
You call him useless?
No, Ulis.
It sounded like useless. Booker.
Yeah.
So there's a ton of Kentucky guards in there. And also you look at the small forward position. I'm still a big fan of TJ Warren. I just see his top end as a 6-man, but still, I mean, keeping him as your starting small forward for the time being for 1 year, I don't think is a huge travesty, especially if he stays healthy and can be consistent. I think TJ Warren's in a nice spot there. I think it's going to be interesting to see what Philadelphia does. I think that's going to have a major effect there on Phoenix. And obviously we can see as our whole mock draft kind of gets completely different. I'll start it off. Sacramento at the 5 spot. Obviously, we've talked last week, I think it was, Philadelphia possibly making a trade. Maybe, I've seen Philadelphia moving picks and players, swapping places with Sacramento, the 3 and 5 spot. But I have Sacramento, if they stay at the 5 spot, going with De'Aaron Fox at the late. My mock draft is laid out. We've heard about it so many times. You already have De'Aaron Fox going. Dave already has De'Aaron Fox going. De'Aaron Fox, great defensively, so quick, one of the quickest players in this draft, if not the quickest.
Yeah.
Great passing vision. Obviously needs to work on a shot a little bit, but still that's something to be worked on. And if that is your biggest drawback, that is something teams can work with. We obviously saw a guy like Buddy Hield was shooting with his wrong hand, and he turns into a Wooden Award player winner and really a bright spot for the Sacramento Kings team. You look at De'Aaron Fox's skill set, fits really well with that really timeline of this team, and then also the skill set of guys like Buddy Hield, Willie Cauley-Stein, et cetera, et cetera. So I think De'Aaron Fox is a perfect fit there.
The big question, though, and this is kind of the thought process that I was having, because I'll be honest, I sat there at 5 and I thought, although De'Aaron Fox is off my board, I'm like, do they reach for like a Dennis Smith Jr.? Do they go and take it just to get that point guard early? And part of me was like, hey, you know what? Go with a different need, and then let the Knicks and Dallas figure out what they're going to do, and there will be somebody there at 10 for you guys to take point guard wise. For me, like I said, a little bit different because De'Aaron Fox was off the board. If De'Aaron Fox is there, you go ahead and take him. But that was something that kind of played into my decision here is, do you value the point guard position so highly at 5 if, let's say, like for Dave and Mai's case, where Fox is off the board?
No, I think that's fair. It's just, you're right. It's such a twisting thing because there's, the spots between them and their next pick, there's a lot of upheaval in what could go down there. And
3 of the 4 could go point guards.
And that's the thing. And it's such a crazy draft how top-loaded the point guard position is, and then it's just barren for the entire rest of the first round.
I mean, you're talking now about, possibly a guy like Donovan Mitchell going to a 1 spot where he's played consistently in college, a 2 spot. Now you're wondering if he can really develop into a point guard. Really, you look at the next point guard off on the board. I think it's Juwan Evans, where we have a guy going around the 20 mark. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what Sacramento does. I think it's just, De'Aaron Fox not only is a great fit, I think he has probably more star potential than a guy like Jason Tatum, Jonathan Isaac, Frank, Dennis Smith, et cetera, et cetera. I think that he is not only the best value, but the best fit as well. Both you look at his skill set and his passing ability. I think that's really going to fit well with this team, because you look at a guy like Frank, he's going to need a lot of time to develop, where I think the Sacramento team, when you look at Buddy Hield's age, you look at Willie Cauley-Stein's age, I think that De'Aaron Fox might be, while he is young, I think that he might be able to advance quicker than a guy like Frank. And you look at Dennis Smith, the problems with his ACL injury, I think that's going to be something that really kind of hurts him.
I still think, for me, it's Dennis Smith, because I trust in the Bogdan pickup.
Well, De'Aaron Fox is already gone for you, so that's one thing too.
They need a point guard. I'm taking no risks. I'm saying we're going to get one first pick available, and Dennis Smith is an explosive player. You talked about his drawbacks as far as his injury, and he sort of has a little bit of negativity around him as far as giving up on his team, perhaps, late in the season. So, yeah, there's some possible personality problem there, but I think there's nothing that can't be coached through, and I really believe, like, Sacramento is on the turn of you have a great coach, and
I was just bringing it up.
behind
You
that.
look at Sacramento. I mean, they just got rid of someone with personality problems in Boogie. Obviously not as big. Dennis Smith
but
as
Boogie
Boogie
has grown those problems in Sacramento. I think is the difference there. It's
just joking.
suffering through the awfulness of them.
Yeah.
That's fair. But no, Dennis Smith, dynamic player. He could give you. I mean, he has superstar potential. Like it's up there. He's probably like number 3 or 4 for me. But like the big drawback is he going to be consistently healthy, and is he going to give it his all every night? And I think that Sacramento is a great fit for him. I think the fit is right. I think the need for Sacramento to get a point guard ASAP in this draft and lock in their backcourt of the future is there. So for me, it's like let's take care of this and let's take a deep breath. And I think that Bogdan will come over, and I think that honestly he's the big question mark because they can go out in free agency and spend some money if they need to on another small forward. But see what you got. You spent some draft pick on him, so you might as well go for it.
I mean, and that's the one thing that kind of played into it a little bit is you do have Bogdan coming over. But, I mean, ultimately, I looked at it and I went, you know what, BPA pick, Jason Tatum is there. And it's like Bogdan is also, he's coming over, but we have high hopes for him, but we don't know exactly what he is going to do when he's actually on the Kings. I mean, the Kings have been a team where we've had some high hopes before, and then it hasn't really worked out for them. So I go BPA, and then I say, you know what, at 10, we're going to go ahead and worry about that
Come
point
on,
guard.
I mean, Papa John's, you didn't expect them to go... They could wild card us here.
Pick.
They honestly could wild card.
Surprise picks.
We could see
They can go Frank.
I don't know if that's too surprising. I mean, they need a point guard.
I mean, at 5, I'd take Dennis Smith over Frank.
Well, I'm just saying. I mean, it's not too crazy. I mean, he is still a top 10 player.
Jawan Evans at 5. Is that more shocking
that's
for
more
you?
shocking.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I had Papa Giannis as my Papa Giannis or whatever.
In your second round last year.
Second round, he goes 13. Anyways, let's move on now to Orlando, one of our favorite teams outside of Sacramento. I love how they're back-to-back, really. It really fits the fast break. Looking at this, for me at least, De'Aaron Fox off the board, Josh Jackson off the board, Malik Monk off the board, Lonzo, Fultz off the board, best player available. And we talked about this already, the growth of Alfred Payton, the lack of growth from Hazonia, the lack of growth from...
Take the horse.
Yeah.
Sir Casey wasn't happy that we took the horse.
The lack of growth from Fournier as well. I mean, Fournier's been all right. But still, you look at that, they need a superstar in Orlando. I think Jason Tatum can develop into a superstar. We were talking about this before the Fast Break podcast in very basic blueprint ways. You look at Josh Jackson with his athleticism, maybe he can be an athletic scorer like a guy like Vince Carter or Tracy McGrady. Not saying he's going to be that, just saying. And then also you look at Jason Tatum, though, a little bit more fluid guy. Kind of reminds me of
Carmelo.
Carmelo, I was going to say Paul Pierce as well.
Oh, yeah,
kind of
definitely.
Similar to those two players, just in the fact that they are smooth, they are very shifty in their ways. Like they're guys that
and they have good hands, and they don't. They're not. Well, early Carmelo was not a black hole of offense.
Yeah, and I think Tatum can be a very similar player. And I think Tatum will fit very well in Orlando.
I think he's one of the probably weirdly like earliest ready guys. And I think in Orlando, like give him playtime early, and you won't regret it.
And I think that's one thing with Orlando too. You look at that team. I mean, Vucevic is a decent player right now. Aaron Gordon, one of their younger players, is still growing as well. And you look at Peyton. I mean, this team is a little higher. At least age timeline than we've seen from out of other players. They just don't have that superstar to take them to the next level. If Tatum is ready and he's able to take over right away, I think this could be a really nice fit for this team. So Dave and I both have Tatum going there. Ricky, what do you got?
I have same position, different guy, because obviously Tatum's off the board in mine. I got Jonathan Isaac, and the reason being is I look at that small forward position, and I'm not sold on any of the guys that I see on the depth chart. But also, he's a guy that gives you the 3-and-D. He's versatile in the multi-positionals that he can guard on the defensive end. And there's a weird thing, and I mentioned this before we started recording, was I have this like weird feeling. I don't know if it's something just because the gap in potential, maybe not the ceiling, but the amount of growth from Isaac could be greater than Tatum and Jackson, to where I look at this and I go, man, I kind of have this weird feeling that Isaac develops, and at the end we're going, man, he should have been the first small forward off the board.
I don't know about that, but I think you're right about the growth that he does have, because you look at Florida State when he was a kid that played around 20 minutes, wasn't even the first option, wasn't even the third option or second option on that Florida State team. You look at Dwayne Bacon, that was a really Dwayne Bacon heavy team, but you look at the ability of Jonathan Isaac both defensively. We really haven't seen a ton from him offensively, and what we have seen has been really nice. And
He's just got to develop that scorer's mentality.
And I think he needs the time to develop. I don't think he got that at all at Florida State. So I agree with you that he might have the most. I don't know. I think that's a lofty claim, though, saying that.
Well, I'm just saying it's a weird feeling I have that I'm not really going out there and going out on that branch, but I'm like, I have a weird feeling.
I feel like that there's a lot of unknown about him still because he wasn't the dominant player on the team. So I think fit is the most important thing for him going forward in the NBA, because he wasn't in that like spotlight role at Florida State. So I think that if he gets pushed into a role where he has to be the scorer right away, I think that could be really bad for him and for his growth. So
I think that's something that might be, but I mean, at least the Magic, I don't think he's going to be looked at as being the scorer. Because,
no one scores.
Well, that's the thing. They don't score.
Team averages 80 points a game in the NBA.
But, I mean, really, it's weird saying, but their number one offensive option.
I love the straight face from Dave. No one scores straight face.
Well, I mean, their two highest scores, I think, both average around 18 points a game. But you look at really their first scoring option might end up being Terrence Ross, really, on that team with Jonathan Isaac going there. I mean, Peyton's like a fourth or third option. Aaron Gordon, he has potential. He has a lot of athleticism, but I don't know if he's going to be a scorer. Vucevic is a good scorer. We know that. Fournier as well.
He just can't stay on the floor for long periods of time.
Yeah, it's just it's going to be weird. I think it's something where I like the fit because Frank Vogel, defensive coach, Jonathan Isaac's going to add a lot of defense there, but still, I don't know if he has that star potential right away, or a guy like Tatum and Josh Jackson.
I'm looking for something to kind of put them back on the map. Because remember what Draymond said. Is he the reason? Is KD really the reason why Orlando still sucks? No.
Yeah.
No. The reason Orlando still sucks is because they have not been able to develop their players to the next level. Really, they move around a lot of pieces, but they can't really land on guys who become the building blocks for this franchise.
Well, and they really have had hallmarks. When this team is up, they've had hallmarks that have really pushed this team. You look at Shaq early, you look at Penny early, then you look at T-Mac, then you look at Dwight Howard. I mean, these are the guys that really excelled them into the limelight. They don't have a guy that I see can do that. I don't know if Isaac can do that right away, and I think it might take him a while, a couple 4 or 5 years to get to that level where he might be a hallmark of a team.
Fairly raw,
So that's why I think he kind of fits really well with the team at 7. That's why I've had him mocked. I think pretty much every single mock draft that I've had, and it's going to the Minnesota Timberwolves. You look at Isaac, again, we talked about his defense a little bit, how he's going to fit Frank Vogel, how Frank Vogel's a defensive coach. He's going to fit Tom Thibodeau even better. I mean, Tom Thibodeau is one of the best defensive coaches we have seen, one of the most prevalent defensive coaches we have seen as well. I think Jonathan Isaac's a natural fit as well, because you look at the lack of scoring that he will be really relied on with Karl Anthony Towns, Zach LaVine, Andrew Wiggins, all these players around him. I think that's going to take a lot of load off him, and he can just really do what he needs to do. And that's like a 3-and-D player, like you mentioned, that will fit the Orlando Magic. I think Minnesota is a perfect landing spot for Jonathan Isaac, but obviously he's off the board for you, Ricky. So why is this player that you have
Malik Monk
such a good fit?
The reason why is it's one of those things where I look at it and it goes, okay, this is a similar situation to the last lottery mock that we did, was Zach LaVine coming off of his injury. You're kind of unsure what he's going to do, what he's going to bring coming off of his knee injury. Also behind him, you don't really have a solid backup behind him, so you can have Malik there also. But then I look at the point guard situation, and I go, Rubio's someone that we've talked about ad nauseum, maybe getting moved. We still don't know what Dunn's going to bring to this team. And really they can draft Monk and kind of decide what they're going to do with him. Is he just going to be a guard that they kind of play? Because he does have although he's a shooting guard, he does have the tools to grow as a point guard. So they can draft him and then kind of decide where he fits into that backcourt, either as a 2 or a 1.
He's going to need a lot of growth to become a 1. I think that's for sure.
He can grow. I didn't say it's a short growth, but he has the tools to grow.
We'll see how he has the body to become a point guard for sure. We know that. I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I think they'll definitely either need to move Rubio. Maybe they move LaVine for a point guard that they can at least set on.
He becomes the main shooting guard.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I think Malik Monk isn't a terrible fit, but then again, that's a lot of offense and a defensive-minded coach. Dave, you have Isaac.
I do. I think
kind
it's
of going between the two. What are your thoughts on that? Because I think Monk's still available.
Monk is still on my board.
So why would you take Isaac over Monk, like Ricky's saying?
For me, it's absolutely like Minnesota's wet dream situation to have Jonathan Isaac still on the board. Honestly, they're like a team and a need fit perfectly for them, and that's the thing. Isaac has potential, like Ricky said. He could be, like, looking back at this draft, like the second best player, third best player on the board.
And Thibodeau could probably make him phenomenal defensively.
And that's the thing. Like, the coach matches perfectly. You talked about the defensive prowess of Thibodeau and the way he'll grind out your knees and you'll play 40 minutes a game, but you will learn the game inside and out. And there's not many better teachers in this game from a coaching position. So I really have trust in that kind of relationship building over time. And the fact that he isn't going to be counted on to be a scorer, because he doesn't have that killer instinct. He's not the ball heavy guy. He's just there to take care of his own, and then he can guard anything under the sun. So it's a perfect fit for a team that's so woefully inadequate defensively last year, and it cost them so many games. I think Zach LaVine's injury is a concern. They're going to probably end up spending a little money in free agency to get a backup guard, in my mind, because it's between him being injured and, like you said, Rubio's been on the trade block for a year straight, and we haven't seen enough growth out of Dunn. He got thrown in the deep end last year, so still a little concerned, but you know what? I'm going to let it go for one more year and just kind of see how it plays out. I think Isaac is an instant plug-and-play success there, though.
And I think it's interesting, too, that Dave is the highest on Malik Monk out of all of us, and you have him going 8. So,
I would have had Isaac go there, too, if I didn't have him go to the Magic right before.
Well, yeah. Well, let's go to Dave. New York, obviously, on the board now. At number 8, you're super high on Malik Monk, probably the highest out of Ricky, you and I.
I watched a lot of his games.
But you haven't fallen.
Dave likes Kentucky.
I do. I like winners.
You haven't fallen.
But you like rebuilds.
I like rebuilds and
You like winners, but he likes rebuilds also.
You haven't fallen.
I do.
So why the fall, and why would New York finally pick him up?
Okay. So the fall is because of, I mentioned a little bit earlier on, for me, his upside is one of the best scorers in the league. When he's hot, he's as hot as Klay Thompson has been. It's just absolutely fire. He gets his stroke, and then he finds anywhere beyond that three-point line, he's golden from as soon as he gets on. So with him, it's more of getting him going and getting him involved in the game. And when he is not, he's had a lot of like 1 for 10, 1 for 11 games. So he becomes such a useless player for you. The upside to that is he's not afraid to continue taking shots, and there is the odd chance that even if he's on an ice cold night, he can make a clutch shot for you. But he doesn't contribute enough to you off ball or defensively that it's worth it for me to go for him as a top 5, top 6 pick. I think in a city like New York, where you can pair him down low with Porzingis, Melo, I know there's such controversy around him if he's going to be there for much longer or not.
Not even thinking about Melo in the future.
It helps you stretch out the floor. And I think as a young guy, him growing with Porzingis down in the low post and him out behind that three-point line, I think you have a great tandem there. And you can sort of hide him defensively wherever at the 1 or the 2, whichever the other team has the worst matchup at, because he doesn't have the size to guard 2s or 3s at all. Yeah, and he doesn't have the lateral quickness to beat people off the pick and roll. So for me, it's him being a fantastic spot-up shooter, and when the ball's in his hands, he can catch lightning in a bottle. But at the same time, if he's not, he's just a waste of space.
And I think one thing too that's interesting with Malik Monk, I mean, you talk about the matchup with Porzingis, at least the mix with Porzingis.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the lateral quickness to beat you by a pick and roll. But however, with Porzingis being so big and Porzingis being so great as he is, I think a pick and pop could be very interesting with him.
Absolutely.
Where Monk could step back, create a little bit space with the size of Porzingis, kind of blocking off defenders, and then him stepping back and taking a shot from deep. So I think that's an interesting pair. I just don't know if he's going to fall. I mean, again, you talk about the explosiveness of Malik Monk
his upside
and
is
his scoring.
A crazy score.
I think that's just so hard for people to pass.
The size and the frame and the defensive liability built in with the fact that if he could give you more, it's just his game is so pinpoint, spotlight specific. He's not a well-rounded player, and that's where my concern is. At the top of this draft, you're either looking, you can get one of the best role players potentially for the next 10, 15 years. He could be like Jamal Crawford level, like JJ Redick style, just absolute murderous from the three-point line and as a scorer in general. But it comes to or I could take a shot at someone who has a well-rounded game and a potentially higher upside as a everyday starter in my lineup.
Yeah,
So
I think it's just interesting. I don't see him falling. And that's all. That's all. I don't see him falling. Ricky, we obviously differ though. Here we got point guard. We're sticking with point guards here.
That's a big need. That's a big need I see for the Knicks.
So obviously there's 2 point guards left on the board. We're differing here. Why do you have Frank? I don't know what you go to Frank. Why do you have Dennis Smith?
I almost had Frank.
I
almost did.
I switched before we started.
The main reason why I almost had Frank was I was like, well, you know what? Phil took Porzingis before. Maybe he'll take Frank again. But I look at the 2, and I just like what Dennis Smith would bring to the Knicks. The Knicks need a guy who's an explosive athlete, who's a ball handler, who can get into the lane, who has that kind of elite scoring and has that in his ceiling, in his potential, but also can drive and, the shot's not there, kick it out to someone, or even I picture it in my head. Smith drives in, goes up for the layup, dishes it to Porzingis, who's right there for a quick dunk. I mean, the options with this is they need a guy who, because like Dave mentioned with Melo, when I think of the Knicks' future, Melo's not there. I took my eraser and I just erased him from the floor because he is not a part of the plan for me moving forward. And they need a guy, if Melo's not going to be there, not going to be that scorer, they need a guy that's going to say, I can put the team on my back, and I'm going to develop into that guy where it's crunch time, final shot, it's on me.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think you talk about star potential. I think Dennis Smith has it. I mean, you look at his explosiveness, you look at his athleticism, you look at his personality. I think that might fit really well into New York, or might be very pretty toxic in New York, depending on how his personality ends up. I think it's a natural fit there for Dennis Smith. However, you talk about Phil and his love for international players, and you also look at Frank just in general as a prospect. I mean, we still don't know his wingspan, but people are saying it's around 7'1", 7'2". I think
potentially 7'1".
Frank's a lot better defensively.
Well, he's a lot better defensively,
too.
And he's had the output. Scoring wise, I mean, he had games in the France under 18. I know definitely you're playing Lithuanian kids who are under 18 years old. You're playing not the highest of competition, but he has shown ability to put up like 22 a night and put up 31 points and shoot pretty well from the outside and just be a great scorer and be a facilitator. So I think Frank, with his potential, I think maybe it was luck with Phil hitting on Porzingis, but maybe
a lot of people didn't like that pick.
But maybe he knows what he's talking about. Maybe Phil does a lot of intensive scouting internationally. Maybe the Knicks have fantastic international scouts. I just look at Frank, and I think you have the body that we really haven't seen from many different point guards. We haven't seen the size, the arm span, the wingspan. I'm sorry, the wingspan of a guy like Frank. If he can develop offensively, I think he could be a very interesting player, especially going with a lot of length and size in Porzingis. If those two compare really well, I think it's going to be an interesting fit for the two. I think ultimately, I think they'll probably end up going Dennis Smith just because it's a safer pick, and they don't have to wait time on it. And you look at New York, you kind of need an instant product in New York because those fans can kind of get a little bit a little anxious. So I look at Frank, and I think you see him as more of a project. And with Carmelo going, that New York Knicks team could be really bad with Frank and Porzingis as your 1-2 combo when Frank is really developing. So I think it's interesting to go to see where they will go, but I think they're going to go point guard for sure. If Malik Monk's still on the board, though, I think they might go Monk over both point guards. But
I just think the explosive potential and kind of like the fame that he could bring, like his personality, I feel like would fit really well in New York. I'll just leave it at that.
Let's move on to Dallas. Another big market, but obviously a team run by Mark Cuban, probably the biggest personality that Dallas has ever seen. Him and Dirk. We go to Dallas. Obviously, they need a point guard here. You have Nerlens, you have Dirk, you have Harrison Barnes. You really look at that 2 spot as well. Wesley Matthews has proven to be a great outside shooter in Portland before. So you look at that point guard position, and that is their biggest need. For me, you guys already talked about Dennis Smith. I don't need to really say much. The only biggest problems with him is personality and his injuries. If he can stay healthy and he isn't that bit, and the personality issues are kind of blown out of the water, I think Dennis Smith's going to be a fantastic player. But you guys taking Frank. Why Frank here, outside of the fact that he's the only point guard really worth taking here?
I mean, really, that's all my reasoning is. Dallas is just going to sit there. You guys sort out everything. We'll take whoever's left. Out of Fox, Smith, and Frank, everyone above us, you figure out what you're going to do. If one of them's left, we'll take it. If one of them's not there, then we'll figure it out. That's what Dallas is going to do.
Yeah, he's the last point guard standing, which is a fair point, but I also think it kind of fits nicely for Dallas because he's someone who you guys are already talking point guard, but in my mind, he doesn't have the handles or control to be a point at the NBA level yet.
I mean, he's young.
That's the thing. He is, I think, the youngest player in this draft, if not very close to.
He's 18. 18. 18.
All the way till August, right?
Yeah, he's 18 for sure.
That's the thing. It's like you're getting a very young player who right now a little turnover happy, but you see the upside and the potential that he can come in as a 2 guard and instantly impact your team, and eventually transition over to the 1 over time because he's so young.
July 28th.
Okay, July. So yeah, still uber young, crazy upside. You guys talked about defensively can guard 1 through 3 without a concern in my mind. And honestly, it just comes down to the fact that like the timeline works out because he's such a young guy. And you're gonna have him under your control for so long. It's the perfect matchup for Dallas for like a cornerstone of their franchise.
And I just want to mention, my memory isn't going to shit here. I know we record late at night, but my memory isn't going to shit. It was Rodriguez Beaubois was the French point guard. And I think Dallas might go back to that French connection there because obviously Beaubois was very good for him. He just got injured and really wasn't able to reclaim what he had before. So I think Frank could be an interesting fit again. 6'5", 170. We don't know his wingspan yet, but around 7 feet, 7'1". That's unreal.
Well, and the thing that I look at, and it's Dave, you mentioned it, where you're like, well, you don't think he has the handles to come in. What they can do contract-wise is they can say, okay, Yogi, we've got the club option with you. We're going to pick that up. You're going to be the main point guard right now while Frank comes in and is kind of just underneath you. Because let's be honest, this team is not competing for anything next year. They're not competing for a championship, which is the ultimate goal.
Well, no.
You might compete for like
Dirk's going to drag you close to an 8 seed.
But they're not competing for the ultimate goal, so they can bring Yogi back to be the starter, and then have Frank under him for that first year.
We're looking at one of the best teams we've ever seen.
No, I know.
Ever assembled.
That means the West is one.
There's 3 teams possibly, maybe even only another team. There's pretty much the Cavs and Spurs that can pretty much compete with the Warriors. I'm not saying that Dallas is going to win an NBA championship drafting Frank right away.
We're thinking distant future.
Yes,
if we're not the Spurs or the Warriors.
He could be a drafting stash as well. I mean, that's the thing. He doesn't need to be there day one.
I think he should, though. I think it would really help him. Anyways, let's move on now to the last pick in the top 10. This has been a long segment. You guys are getting the special, the fast break special. The Sacramento Kings back on the clock here. My pick, and same with Dave. I'm surprised this guy's coming back on your board because you kind of trash talked him last time.
I really don't like him, but I think that he's the best player available at this point in time.
And he does fit. I mean, you look at Lauri Markkanen and you look at where the Sacramento Kings currently are. You look at the 5 spot, Willie Cauley-Stein and Georgios Papagiannis, our favorite player. Those guys are pretty much going to fit at that 5. Then you look at Scale. That guy's a 4. And you plug in Lauri. I mean, he's a guy that can really add some 3-point shooting. I know Scale can really stretch it out a little bit. But really, I mean, Lauri, this is a kid that is known for his 3-point shooting. I think he could be a nice change of pace when looking at the Sacramento Bigs. You look at Willie Cauley-Stein bringing his athleticism, his speed, his length. You look at Scale bringing his offensive game. And then you look at Georgios Papagiannis, a guy that can really, he's been able to stretch it out before, but a guy that I would really put inside and kind of show that old school kind of, working on the block and working inside kind of offensive game. So you have a lot of different guys that you can plug and play, and I think that might work well with a guy that's versatile with Buddy Hield and De'Aaron Fox that I ever drafted. So I think Lauri Markkanen is a perfect fit there. But Ricky, you have a fresh face to our top 10.
I do.
Explain the pick.
I've got Donovan Mitchell, and the reason being is I see him being drafted by the Kings here, and not drafted as the shooting guard, but as the guy who is going to develop and improve to be the point guard next to Buddy Hield. Because he can already shoot, he's already got the defensive potential, but if you can get him to just kind of shore up those point guard skills to be next to Buddy Hield, this could be something in the future where Buddy Hield can shoot, he can shoot, you add shooting more and more through future draft picks.
Who went for them at 5 for you?
At 5, I went with Jason Tatum.
Yeah, so very young. Yeah, not very young because Buddy Hield's the old man, but nice core to build around.
And like Jason Tatum, he's not his shooting isn't his main thing, but he's the guy that can get into the lane and give you that scoring inside. So that's why Donovan Mitchell, not one of the top point guards, but he's a guy that you can pick and develop into a point guard. Maybe bring Collison and or Lawson back to kind of be there while he works on those skills.
I think that's the thing. Donovan Mitchell, if you draft him, probably, at least on that team, I think he'll probably be a guy that comes off the bench for you and you develop him there. And you play a guy like Collison or Lawson there. They do. They have a ton of guards.
That's the thing. Like that.
They have a ton. They have a ton of players.
Well,
really small forwards that are thin position.
Yeah. Collison and Lawson are up after this free agency, so they can bring both of them back. They can bring one of them back. They can bring none of them back.
Well, yeah, Sacramento's got a lot of.
I like that. I just don't know if Mitchell's a great fit as a future point guard for them. For me, I just want, like you said, Lauri Markkanen, he's going to be like Ryan Anderson. The value of a stretch four in the NBA is very high, and at this point, it's having that guaranteed like staple at your four. Even coming off the bench, I love Scale. I think the Scale Cauley Stein thing is like a perfect 4-5. I don't know where Papa John's is, really, to be honest with you. Like, I haven't seen enough of him play. He's super young.
He wasn't bad. I'll give it to him.
So, it's more of a wait and see on him. So that's why I'm like, we can go ahead and grab another 4, and then we've got our first roster and second, like, we've got our 2 lineups of 4-5 locked in for the next couple of years, and we're happy with it. So, yeah, I just think the value of a stretch four in the NBA, regardless of how terrible defensively he is and how specialized he is.
Well, and it's one thing too with the Kings. If you have you have 4 players who can play, the 4 and 5. If one trails off, or you have 2 guys competing for the same position, that gives you a lot of value. You can move those guys for different access and fill up your team more. So I think really loading up at that position where you can really develop guys and fit your team and really throw a lot of different looks at teams, I think could be very interesting for the Sacramento Kings. Thank you. Oh shit. It's just one of our videos scared me a little bit. Don't forget to check out that one. And also don't forget to check out patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast. But thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.